The emes is, I was trying to finish up this series on Hilchos Tefillah, but I keep on getting emails from people saying, can you give share on this? Can you give share on that? Like, for example, there's a Yid, Ari Lichtenstein, he has a gewaltige kasha here. He says to me, he writes it in Hebrew, but really, I think he's from America. He's thank you very much for the share, and he listens to share on the journey, and he was looking for specifically shiurim on Hilchos Tefillah because he really wanted to learn about Hilchos Tefillah. Like, where do you learn Hilchos Tefillah? How much time do you get? Opportunities to learn. People learn Hilchos Shabbos, people learn Hilchos Kashrus and Yom Tov and whatever. How many people sit down? Let's learn Hilchos Tefillah. So he really wanted to do that. Baruch Hashem, he said it came at the right time. He said in Yeshua, and then he asked a random shaila. And then there was a bacha in yeshiva, also sent me a message. He's in yeshiva in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. Please, can you give share on the halachas of please can you give share on the halachas of when you're allowed to respond Amen, Yehesh Me Rabbah, and Baruch Hu, and all these things in the middle of davening. So I said, I responded back and I said, listen, I don't know, I'm in the middle of other things. We have to get Hilchos Yom Tov, it's coming up to Yom Tov of Shavuos. I need to get Hilchos Shavuos, whatever. So he said, please do it as soon as possible, because I don't know when yeah and when no. And he signed off, Yitzi Sheh. Oh, that's very nice. Baruch Hashem. He's listening to Shurim. So he's listening to these Shurim, Baruch Hashem. Even if he's not here, he's here. Oh, big welcome, Rabbi Isai. They always come back. Yoni Tolwin. Here he is. Baruch Hashem. Okay. There we go. They always come back. Baruch Hashem. Okay. So with that introduction, I'm actually starting today's share. That's what it is, okay? The reason I'm doing this is because the Yitzi Sheh asked, and also because it seems that some of the Olam have been asking these questions. Very, very Nageya Kashas. Now, the Maisa, it's probably not Nageya to anyone here. And I'll tell you why. Because when you come to davening 10 minutes early, you put on your tefillin, you start opening the siddur and you daven normally, you're going to be good. You're going to be holding where the tzibur is holding. So it's not a gaya to anyone here. But I'm telling you guys, because in case you go out there in the world and people are going to say, oh, you went to the yeshiva where they learn halacha, could you please answer me this question? Now you'll know what to do. You'll know how to answer them. But of course, it's one of those questions of, I'm asking for a friend. Okay? You know those questions? I'm asking for a friend, right? You know what I'm talking about? I'll go upon him. Let's go very quickly. I'm not going to give Mar Mekomis. I'm so sorry. There's so many Mar Mekomis. There's so many Shulchan Aruchs and Igus Moshes and Shevet Alevis. And it's unbelievable how many Mar Mekomis there are there. I'm just not going to go through it because this can't cost forever. I want to go Keseda, what you can and cannot do. Pinchas, you with us? Very, very important. Let's go. We are going to start. I wish we're going to continue and finish everything today. I don't think we're going to manage. So if not, maybe after Yom Tov, we'll continue the series. But as Hashem, there's a couple more things I wanted to speak about as well, just to finish off the series on Hilchos Tefillah. Maybe we'll get to it after Yom Tov, B'li Neder. We'll see how we go. But I'll call upon him, because in Mitzvah next week we're discussing Hilchos Yom Tov already. Be'ez Hashem. I'll call upon him. Pesuka Dezimra. Let's begin with Pesuka Dezimra. Now this is very Negeya. A guy comes to shul. He's in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra. Boom! They start things going on. The Chazan gets up there. We spoke about that yesterday. The Shlech Tzibur. The Heilige Chazan, the Shlech Tzibur, gets up and says things. What am I allowed to say or not? So before we even get there, Lemaisa, something that we have spoken about previously, but we're just going to say it again. Anybody that comes late, Chas v'shalom, lo aleinu lo aleichem, comes late to shul, and the minyan is holding by, Oz Yoshev, Vayivach Toved, Vayishtabach, whatever it is, like, I better get a move on. The halacha is you are allowed to skip chalakim of davening, specifically obviously Pesuka Dezimra, in order to daven with the minyan. As we spoke about previously, Tefillah b'tzibur lechatchila means to daven Shmoyne Esra in the beginning with the tzibur. So make sure that you start with the tzibur together, which might mean you may have to skip Aaron Gedalia, parts of Pesuka Dezimra, in order to get to start Shmoyne Esra with the tzibur when they're starting. Very, very important, right? Especially if there's no other minyan available, or you're in yeshiva, whatever it may be. Of course, after Shacharis, you should try to catch up and say and be mashlim the things that you omitted. But I will tell you very, very quickly, the following items, the following chalakim, the following paragraphs and tefillahs should not and cannot be omitted. And that is, the bracha on tefillin and talis, baruch sha'oma, ashrei, it's on Shabbos nishmas, and yishtabach. Those cannot be skipped at any cost. Absolutely not. Now the question is, what happens? A person comes so late to davening that it's too late for him even to say the minimum. He said Birchas HaTorah, he said a bracha on his tefillin, he's good with the kind of shoma, he's good with that. But he wants to say Baruch Shama Ashrei Nishtabak. That's the bare minimum of Pesuka Dezimra. he makes a cheshbon. The mamish holding almost by Shemanesra. If I say Baruch She'amar Ashrei Nishtabach, I'm not going to have enough time to be able to do that, right? So what is the din in that case? And I want to daven Tefillah B'tzibur. That means I want to daven with the Olam. The Olim are already holding by the end of Krishma, so there's no way I'm going to get there, because I also have to say Berachos Krishma and Krishma, of course. So, and there's of course no other minyan, or he cannot daven another minyan, whatever it may be, because of course if there's another minyan, Avada, you should go to another minyan. But if there's no other minyan, or in yeshiva, or whatever, so halacha is, you should actually rather daven alone, rather than miss out, and alone meaning start from the beginning all the way down to the end, rather than miss out Baruch She'amar Ashrei and Yishtabach. I will tell you, by the way, the Olim should know the Heilige Balatanya, the Shulchan Aruch Harav and Balatanya Paskins, that you can actually skip Balatanya. You could skip the whole Pesuka Dezimra in such a situation and say it after Shachris, but without Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach. That is the psak of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Bal Hatanya. In fact, the Sfardim for some reason follow that opinion for whatever reason. But Akapodim most hold that you should just daven completely from the beginning, slowly to the end, and just you'll unfortunately miss Tefillah B'tzibur, Ein Ma La'asot. Of course, if you have more time, what do you do then? What's the Seder of preference of davening Pesuka Dezimra? And again, it's not negated to anyone here, but in case Chas v'Shalom you come late to davening, now you know what you could skip and what you cannot skip and in what order. So until now we've said the Ikar is Baruch She'amar Ashrei Yishtabach or Pesuka Dezimra. That's bare minimum pretty much. If you got a little bit more time, you realize I can hop in a couple more paragraphs. What do I do now? So I'm going to give you now the order. Again, this Marmar Komis giving you all of this, not for now. Giving you the order of preference, specifically in Nusach Ashkenaz, obviously. Halalu el bekodshoi. Halalu es Hashem min hashamayim. Then you've got the three halalukas afterwards. Then vayivorich David. Then you've got Haidu until Vahurachum. Then you've got Baruch Hashem la'olam amen va'amen. Then you've got Ata Hashem la'vadoi, and then Oz Yoshe until Yishtabach. And then after that, you've still got more time. Again, you can't go out of order, obviously. Vahurachum, we're talking about in Haidu, until Ashrei. And after that, Mizmor Sheh Chanukas Habayis. And then after that, Korbanos and everything else that you have over there. So, Lamaisa, that is the Seder Hadvarim of what a person should do if he has a little bit of more time to do that. Let's move on, Rabbi Isai. What happens if a person is in a minyan and he hears a minyan from another shul? He's at the Kaisel, he hears another shtibel next door, he hears the Ezra's Noshim, and they're davening a minyan over there. What is the din over there? So most poskim say that you only have to respond to a Kaddish, Kedusha, Baruch Hu, and everything like that when they are said in your personal minyan that you are davening in. You have no chiyuv, obligation, to answer to a Kaddish or a Kedusha or a Baruch Hu from a different minyan. Are you allowed? Of course you're allowed. What's that? That's a different shaila. Are you allowed to hot minyan? Hot minyan could be more of a shaila of a heshkofa shaila, but and it depends what order you're going in. But that's not the guy to the shaila of interrupting. So I just want to get kased of that. But if you remind me, maybe we'll give a different sugya on that. But I'll upon him. Yes, are you allowed to answer to other minyanim? Yes, but you do not have a chiyuv to do so in that case. There is, by the way, the Chazon Ish, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky Pascal in this way also, that has absolutely. What do you mean? If you hear Kaddish or Kedusha or a Baruch Hu from a different minyan, and you're holding in a place that you're allowed to interrupt, then of course you have an obligation to answer. What's the shaila? You avada have to answer in that case. Moving on, what happens, by the way, not really a tefillah question, but stop, you're in the middle of learning. You're in the middle of learning, and you're right by a shtibel, and the next shtibel are starting mincha. I don't need to daven mincha, daven mincha already, whatever it may be. I'm learning, right? Do I have to answer a devarim shebekadusha or not? The most poskim say that you do not have an obligation to do that because it is going to disturb your learning. However, if in the same room as the minyan, then avada, most poskim say you should respond to kedusha, baruch hu moedim to rabbanon, yud gimel midas, and of course berachos kahanim, because if not, you're being porish min hatzibur, because you're in the actual room. So it makes enough kamina if you're in the room or you're not in the room. Now, what happens if you are in the middle of Baruch She'amar and all of a sudden Kaddish? What do you do now? I'm in the middle of Baruch She'amar, they started Kaddish. What do I do? So Baruch She'amar, if you know, has two sections to it. The first section ends halfway through it and at Baruch Atah Hashem, and the second section is the long bracha that begins with Baruch Atah Hashem and ends with the last bracha at the end of Baruch Atah Hashem. During the first section of Baruch She'amar, a person can answer to any Dvarim Shebekadusha during Pesuka Dezimra, no problem. During the second section of Baruch She'amar, according to the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Balatanya, Rabbi Yisha passes this way. A person can only respond to davening that you can respond to in Birchos Kriya Shema, which we'll get to maybe. However, the Magen Avon, the Mishnah Berurah's psak is that you can interrupt the second section of Baruch She'amar for anything that you can respond to during Pesuka Dezimra. Now, what happens after Baruch She'amar? That's in the middle of Baruch She'amar. What happens after Baruch She'amar? I finish Baruch She'amar, I'm now holding by Halalukas or whatever it is, Ashrei, whatever's going on over there. So after Baruch She'amar, first of all, very important for those Nusach Sfat, you should start immediately without any interruption, without any hefsek, Mizma L'Soida. There should not be any hefsek between Baruch She'amar and Mizma L'Soida. However, if a person needs to answer for a Dvarim Shebekdush at this point, then whatever it is, then there's a mokim to do that, because at the end of the day, the Pesuka say Pesuka Dezimra and Dvarim Shebekdusha are both praises to the Rabbeinu Shalom, which means you are allowed to answer. Now, Ulamaisa, I'm in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, I'm davening. What can I answer to during Pesuka Dezimra? So let's go with Kaddish Baruch Hu and Shema Yisrael. Those three things specifically. Someone hears Kaddish, right? They start saying Kaddish, he's in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, he's allowed to answer two. Ready for this? Hope you guys remember this. Number one, the very first Amen. Number two, Amen Yeshmei Rabbah. And number three, the Amen after Damir and Ba'alma. Those are the three things that he's allowed to answer during Pesuka Dezimra. However, he's not allowed to answer to any other Amen of Kaddish, including the Amen of a Yatzmach B'kunei as well. Also, he's not allowed to say a Brichu as well in that case. Now, Sfardim have a different halacha. I wish I could go through enough community in Ashkenazim and Sfardim, but I don't think Lamais at this moment of time we have any Sfardim over here anyway. So, unfortunately, we haven't got the time for it also. So, we will move on in that case. Baruch Hu, a person's in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra. The Chazan says, Baruchi. What is he allowed to do in that case? The halacha is, whether it's your minion or a different minion, you are allowed to interrupt Pesuka Dezimra to answer Baruch Hu. Shema Yisrael, by the way, I don't know how many people know this, but when the tzibur says Shema Yisrael, everyone is meant to say Shema Yisrael. Even if you right now are not holding by saying Shema Yisrael, you better say it with the tzibur. Kabbalah so Malchus Shema can't be perished with a tzibur. And therefore, what happens if I'm in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, oy vavoy, they just said Kriya Shema. What am I allowed to do? The answer is, for the first pasuk of Kriya Shema, Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem, I can interrupt my Pesuka Dezimra in order to say it together. Of course, it's better to be between paragraphs as opposed to in the middle of a paragraph, but again, that's a different situation. Now, what happens if a person is davening in a late minyan and he realizes, oy vay, Soif Zman Krishma, and therefore if I don't read Krishma, the tzibur that I'm davening on Makbid and Soif Zman Krishma, so they're going to get Soif Zman Krishma, but I'm late. And by the time I get to Krishma, it's going to be past the Zman. What do you do in such a case? So the poskim say, even in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, he is allowed to say, of course, if he hasn't said it already, maybe it's better for him to say it before davening, but if he hasn't said it yet, he's allowed to read Kriya Shema if he will miss the Zman by waiting until he personally gets to Birchas Kriya Shema. By the way, it's better to omit, it's better to leave out parts of Pesuka Dezimra and say Kriya Shema with its brachas at the right time, meaning before Zman Kriya Shema, rather than say Kriya Shema without the brachas before Pesuka Dezimra in order to say the entire Pesuka Dezimra. Next thing to interrupt during Pesuka Dezimra is Chazaras Hashatz. What happens during Pesuka Dezimra? A person wants to hear Chazaras Hashatz. Kedusha, for example, right? A person is allowed to answer to Kadosh and to Lu'umason and Baruch Kavoid and Yimlaich. Those three, Rabbi say, during Pesuka Dezimra. But we don't say Nakdishach or Nakadish, whatever it is, at the beginning of Kedusha during Chazaras Hashatz. That's a very important halacha for a person to remember. Moedim Durabonon as well. A person's in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, the Chazan says Moedim, the Tzibur are meant to say Moedim Durabonon. Yes, during Pesuka Dezimra, you can interrupt Pesuka Dezimra to say the entire Moedim Durabonon. Birchos Kohanim, I'm in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, they're starting Birchos Kohanim. A person is allowed to answer Amen during, for the Pesukim of Birchos Kohanim during Dochening, but not any other situation. And what happens to a Kohen? Again, it's going to take us a long time. Kriyas HaTorah very quickly, Rabbi Slay, and then we will finish. If you are the Bal Korah and they're calling you up, because Lamaisa, they need a Bal Korah, they need someone to line, and you're in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, the Sefer Torah is already on the beam and there's nobody else obviously available, and you're in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, absolutely you are allowed to read Kriyas HaTorah. You could be the Bal Korah in that case. Getting in Aliyah, by the way, also a Kohen or a Levi who is in the middle of Pesuka Pesuka Dezimra should not really lechatchila be called up for an aliyah, but if he's the only kohen and the only Levi, then he can be, but it's best again to be in between the two mizmorim in that case. If someone's in the middle, a regular guy is in the middle of Pesuka Dezimra, and he hears Kriyas HaTorah, and he knows that he won't be able to hear it in a different minyan, he's not going to go to another minyan, he can at the end of the day listen to Kriyas HaTorah, obviously not saying anything, just to be silent between one mizmor and the next mizmor. Let's be very, very quick. Responding during Pesuka Dezimra. Yud Gimel Midas, by the way, the Olam has to know when the Olam and the Tzibur are up to Yud Gimel Midas, especially by Tachnun and these sorts of things. According to most poskim, you should not interrupt Pesuka Dezimra to say Yud Gimel Midas. There are those of Shlomo Zalman that holds you should. Answering amen to any bracha during Pesuka Dezimra is okay. Well, Rabbi said there's tons and tons and tons. Let's go very quickly. Interrupting between Yishtabach and Kaddish. By the way, after you said Yishtabach, there should be no hefsek, no interruption between Yishtabach and Kaddish. However, there are situations that a person can, for example, if a person's waiting for the Shek Tzibur to start Kaddish, there are poskim that allow him to catch up on the Pesuka Dezimra that he skipped because he thought he was late, and after Yishtabach, he realizes he got a couple of minutes, he can chaparain. It's interesting, some of the poskim, the Chacham Ovadia brings this in Rabbi Omer, you are not allowed to say Tehillim or any other tefillah while you're waiting for Kaddish because you can't have a hefsek between Yishtabach and Kaddish. In that case, learning Torah silently, non-verbally, is mutter. There's no problem after Yishtabach while waiting for the tzibur to start Kaddish over there. Okay, Rabbi Say, tons more to do. Maybe we'll do that after Yom Tov Mitzvah Hashem. Shkoyach, have a wonderful day, Rabbi Say, and Mitzvah Hashem next week. Hilchos Shavuos.